as did all my teammates. There was a lot of talk about I endangered my teammates, and I lied to my teammates or my team from day one that I returned, which was July 25th, probably.
All right, guys. So Aaron Rodgers had the opportunity to sit down with Austinite Joe Rogan. As a fellow Austinite, of course I have to tune into this podcast. Of course I got to see Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers debate everything from COVID to his college professors to talk about his life in the NFL. So C Money and I break it all down. Enjoy.
The Joe Rogan experience.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year or so, but man, it's been a good year.
What was the craziness like? Like when all the people were calling you a plague rat and I mean, it's you and how do you say the guy's name? The tennis player,
Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, Djokovic. I mean, we talk about the healthiest human beings on earth, professional
well, he's not
playing
in the U.S. Open now.
Yeah, I know
because of this.
Which is
for anyone that doesn't know what Aaron Rodgers and Joe are talking about right now. So they're about to get into Aaron Rodgers and the vaccine mandates in the NFL. And Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately, had the moment where he said, I was immunized.
Yeah.
But that was not the case because he ended up on the COVID list in a game, I want to say against Kansas City. Yeah, he had to sit out a game against Kansas City because of that.
It was a big deal. I remember like all the headlines that came out about this. Huge deal.
And especially a big deal to State Farms. You think they're not mad that they couldn't put Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in the same game? They had to have Chad Henne versus Aaron Rodgers.
Bananas.
Or
the guy's already had COVID.
Jordan Love.
It. I think he had it twice.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best athletes in the world. I mean, the guy's body's in tip-top condition.
Tennis players are incredible fitness.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no, you can't come. You didn't follow the rules. Like it defies science, defies logic. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes sense, especially at this stage of the pandemic, air quotes. I mean, what the fuck, man? What was it like for you?
It was really difficult for sure, and a lot of different reasons. I think I knew that this was coming down, that at some point I was going to talk about my status because I'd chosen to not get vaxxed for reasons that you talked about on your show and I talked about on.
We should just say it because it's kind of important. You're allergic to a medication or a part of the vaccine.
Right.
What is it called?
PEG, polyethylene glycol. And so I did my research. Now, I think typically speaking, because I'm healthy and I take care of myself, getting vaccinated was not on the top of my list. But, I wanted to look into it because everybody was doing it and talking about it and trying to be safe. And I wanted to make sure I was, doing my part if that's what was necessary to keep myself safe and my loved ones safe and my teammates safe. Then
First off, his explanation of being allergic to the vaccine, is that something that you buy?
Let's see. I buy it, but I do remember that was never mentioned when this happened. That every time the media covered it, they never mentioned that. They would just straight up attack him for his decision.
But in fairness, Rodgers did kind of deflect initially. It wasn't until he showed up on Pat McAfee's show a couple weeks later that he presented this explanation of him being allergic to the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of the hang-up mostly is because he did lie about it. At the end of the day, he did lie in terms of his vaccination status, and a league where everyone posts what they are, whether they're immunized, there we go, or not. Aaron Rodgers said he was, but he wasn't, which I guess you could say it's a little bit of people feeling like, oh, the audacity, he lied to me. But
I honestly think he dodged it because like that whole thing was just such a big deal. Like, especially when the vaccines came out, everybody wanted to know who exactly was vaccinated. I think he dodged it because he just wanted to get past that and just say, okay, yeah, I'm immunized.
But the thing you would say for other, there was other NFL quarterbacks who chose not to get the vaccination. For example, Kirk Cousins was very vocal that he wasn't getting vaxxed. Carson Wentz didn't get vaxxed. Josh Allen, I believe, didn't get vaxxed. So those guys, they were just straight up about not wanting to get vaccinated. The fact that Aaron Rodgers kind of threw this like cloak and dagger type thing of not presenting what side of the issue he really was on. And I don't even know if necessarily he was on one particular side of the issue, whether or not everyone should have been vaccinated or not. But the fact that he went through this whole charade to hide the fact that he was unvaccinated when there was players who were just straight up about it. And the NFL, unlike the NBA, wasn't nearly as strict when it came to the vaccine mandates in each state. So I don't think that he necessarily had to hide his vaccination status like he ended up doing.
I looked into it. And at the time, I went on the CDC website and they specifically said, you know, if you're allergic to PEG, we do not recommend you get vaccinated with the mRNA vaccinations. So the only other one available was Johnson & Johnson. And it had just got pulled at the time for blood clots. So I looked into other options, which included an immunization process through a holistic doctor. And I researched and talked to probably a dozen different MDs and found a protocol that I felt like was the best available.
And what's involved in that protocol?
It involved basically a couple-month process of taking a diluted strand of the virus. So I was doing basically what the vaccine is supposed to do without.
How do they do that?
I don't know the exact way that they did that, but it was
by injection.
No, it was oral. And
how are they even getting a diluted strand of the virus?
I don't know that exact.
Okay, but diluted strand of the virus, I'm just picturing someone just going and straight up with COVID spitting in Aaron Rodgers' mouth when he talks about holistic medicine. That's what I'm picturing. Here, make out with this person that has COVID. It's at home. It's organic. Like, I don't know. It seems like, okay, so he's going through this like song and dance to try and not get vaccinated. And again, it's his choice. I kind of respect it. I guess where the lack of respect kind of comes in is the whole lying about it.
Yeah.
Clear want to get into that exactly. I don't think. but there was
people are spitting
hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people that I knew in this circle that were using, that have been doing this to protect ourselves, because we were thinking, hey, look, for me, I didn't want to risk anaphylactic shock or any type of clotting with associated with the vaccine. So. That was my only option, either do nothing or do this process. And I felt like that this was the best way to protect myself and my teammates, and that the NFL would understand, and maybe grant me a waiver, because one of the most difficult parts about the whole process was that there was clearly two classes of player at the facility. There was the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. And
hold up, question. I saw this meme. Does Aaron Rodgers in this fit look like he could be the dojo leader for Cobra Kai?
He definitely looks like Terry Silver for sure.
Aged down. Did you see him a couple weeks ago when he was in the full Nick Cage fit?
Yes.
God. The vaxxed had full privileges. They tested once every 2 weeks. They had full privileges on the road. They could go out to dinner on the road. They could go to a concert in town. They could go to a comedy show that was in town. They could be at any place they wanted to, right, and live life normally. Non-vaxxed, fully masked, zero privileges on the road. Could not go into establishments with more than 15 people. You could not be around more than three individuals from the team outside the facility. all these different, what I think now we all realize were crazy policies. And that's what actually got me into trouble, was that I attended a Halloween party in a 10,000 square foot warehouse with 18 other individuals, all fully vaccinated, and myself not vaxxed.
18? How dare
and
you,
was
Aaron Rodgers?
eventually fined
How
for that.
dare you?
End up getting COVID from a vaccinated teammate of mine who contracted COVID and spread it. And that's where it gets a little bit crazy. And I told this story, I think on the McAfee show, but I said, when I came to camp, they knew I was not vaccinated, right? So you had to submit a vaccination card. That went to the system with the NFL.
Yeah, man, it's
And
just
obviously I
because
didn't
you
have
said
one,
you
so
were
I was
immunized.
we were given wristbands too. So everybody in the facility knew who was vaxxed and who wasn't vaxxed. Vaxxed was green, non-vaxxed was yellow.
Oof.
So already this weird,
Yeah.
you know, like wearing your colors out there. And I think, you know, to do an aside here, there was a lot of shaming involved in it. There was a lot of public shaming that was attempted to coerce people to get vaccinated, because not only are you wearing a yellow wristband, you're the only ones wearing masks. And you have to work out by yourself. Can't work out with your teammates.
So no drills, nothing?
Well, you could at practice, but weight room stuff, or our weight room every day, we're working out on the side. Just the 7 of us not vaxxed.
Is it because practice is outside and the weight room is inside? Is it
Supposedly, yeah. But so they knew my vaccination status from the start.
How do you feel about what he just said?
I mean, I can see it because they were doing that when they closed down all the gyms, because all the gyms were inside. But the shaming part, yeah, they were definitely doing that, like, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of shaming in that. Even NFL, everywhere. Even in public, even with society itself, there was a lot of shaming.
Yeah, it's like that Dr. Seuss book where we were kind of separating people into the unvaxxed and vaccinated groups.
Mm-hmm.
I can say, I'll put it out there, I was straight up vaxxed. Never had to think about it, never had to worry about it. But during the brief moments in which you were unvaxxed, and hell, I'll go back to the masking thing. I remember once being in a grocery store, and it was pretty new in the pandemic. Like, things had just really started getting going. And someone came up to me as like, "Nice job wearing a mask, asshole." Like,
wow.
Excuse me? You know,
dude,
like,
he didn't even give it a minute.
No, just straight up. This was like the first couple months of COVID even existing in the U.S. It's like, God. I think this might be like the first time I went to a grocery store after the whole outbreak or what have you. So I was thrown back like, "Excuse me, sir. I don't even know who you are."
I think the worst that's happened to me was when Marissa and I went to San Francisco. Of course, here in Texas, they weren't strict on the mask, but as soon as you go into San Francisco and you order an Uber, you have to put that mask on. So yeah. I didn't have my mask on for like 2 minutes, and my driver was freaking out. And I was like, okay, chill. Like, let me just put it on. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, no, there was, I think that it was annoying the people that were super mask, super vaccination. But I also think that it was annoying the people that were anti-mask, anti-vaccination. I think there was like a middle ground that we both skipped. We all skipped in this whole 2-year pandemic. Like, you were either the one that wear your mask, you're killing grandma, or you were on the side of, "Oh, I'm not gonna wear that thing because freedom." And both are kind of like assholes in their own way. I guess the problem is people thought either you were a considerate asshole when it came to the wear your mask people, or you were a self-righteous asshole if you were the one that says, "I'm not wearing that thing."
Yeah, either one was bad, because you'd have the righteous ones that were sick and had COVID, and they would still go out in public. Oh, and it's like, dude, like, what are you doing? And then you had the people with the mask that knew that they could be assholes because they were wearing a mask, and you can't do anything to them. That's how they felt.
Yeah, exactly.
As did all my teammates. There was a lot of talk about I endangered my teammates and, I lied to my teammates or my team from day one that I returned, which was July 25th probably of 2021. They knew where I was at. Everybody did. Also on the side, I had an appeal going with the NFL because I said, look, here's my health issues. Here's the protocol I went through. Here's the research behind it. Gave them 500 pages of research from a number of people that put together case-reviewed studies around homeopathy.
500 pages of research.
And immunizations and the safety in them and also the efficacy of them. And then I had a conversation with the league, and the league said in this conversation, this is when I knew that my appeal was definitely not going to happen, was they said, it's not possible for a vaccinated person, to contract or transmit COVID if they've been vaccinated.
Yeah, that was false.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. Because I showed up and 5 people, non-players, 5 people fully vaxxed are out with COVID.
And he even said he got COVID
about?
from a teammate that was vaccinated.
And he said, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, boy.
And I said, no, I just think I'm a realist. I'm just looking at the facts here. Like
what,
you just
what
told
point
me.
in the pandemic was this?
This was like beginning of August, 2021.
So by then, they had already known that breakthrough infections were real. By then, it had already, the vaccines started being rolled out. What was the first year? It was January of 2020 where they started getting them to older people, right?
No, that's when it started.
Right, I'm sorry. January of 2021, rather.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
January of 2021, they started giving out
I feel
to
like
older
you just
people, wasn't that?
They started rolling
Jamie.
out in March and April because that's when
Feeling
I was
like Jamie
going
C
through
Money.
the process of researching and looking
Yeah.
at what I could do
Right.
He's the
to
fact
protect
checker.
myself, having the allergy that I
And
had.
by August, people were already getting it,
Yes.
even though they had been vaccinated. So this was not,
It wasn't talked about, I don't think, a whole lot.
right. But it was 4 months
But
after
it was definitely happening.
So it was
Yeah.
definitely happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had only known one person at that time, somewhere around April, that had been vaccinated and also got COVID. And I just thought it was an aberration.
I didn't, based on what I saw in the first few weeks at the facility. And that's why I thought that there was an opportunity. But it was difficult because we were separated. There was a whole other situation that was.
Yeah, I'll say that too. I double vaxxed and I still caught it. Have you had to go through it yourself, C Money?
Nope. Never had to. And
Do we got to knock on wood here?
Yep, I'm knocking on wood right now. I always make the joke that if I don't catch it by the end of this year, I'm going up to a lab and say, here, test my blood, test everything. If I have the cure, tell Dr. Fauci I want 500 an ounce.
We're just going to be like that episode of South Park where you're kind of like the Magic Johnson in this situation. We just need some of your blood, mix it up with a whole bunch of money, and suddenly COVID is cured. That's how it's going to happen. I agree with what he's saying to this point, though, because obviously, again, vaccinated, still caught it. And I think, as Joe and him are saying too, we kind of learned fairly early on in the process that just because you were vaxxed doesn't mean you can't catch it. I think the defense has always been, if you are vaxxed and you do catch it, it means that your symptoms will be reduced, which is nice, especially for older people and people that are immunocompromised. I think that makes sense for them in particular to get the vaccination.
What's going on that, also was going on in the rest of society is that my non-vax teammates who were on the bubble, right? So 53 guys make the active roster, 16 on the practice squad. So that's 69 guys on the squad. There's 90 in camp, right? So of the, I said 7, I think it was about 10 guys not vaxxed. Only a few of us were guaranteed roster spots, like we were going to be on the team. And there's a lot of bubble guys. The general managers, and there was there was talk around the league how general managers were not going to keep bubble non-vax players, right? So they were already up against it. Not only did non-vax players have a harder chance of making the squad, but they also had an almost 0% opportunity to get a workout afterwards. So if you get cut, right, and the season starts, every Tuesday during the football season, most teams will bring in anywhere from 5 to 15 guys for workouts just to see who's out there. Is there any players they can add to the roster? So if you weren't vaxxed, you had a very low percentage, not just of keeping a job, but even getting a job opportunity, like a workout.
The practice squad, they had, if they weren't vaccinated, they had a very, very, very small chance of making it. That right there is a big job. That's a job loss.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's talent versus your problems. So your talent has to always outweigh your problems. And I think a lot of people would just say that if you could risk missing the season or missing time, and this is going beyond the virtue signaling of you're killing people's families and stuff like that. No. I think this just goes into you're costing me football games. I don't trust the guy that's costing me football games.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is wild. And so after this conversation with the league, I knew that my appeal was going away, and they were doing this, I called it a witch hunt, where they were asking every single player, are you vaccinated? They were asking a bunch of big quarterbacks, and some guys were saying, it's personal or whatever, didn't want to talk about their status, and that almost guaranteed you weren't vaccinated, right? So then they were getting ripped, and certain guys said, yes, I'm vaccinated, and then they tried to get them to say shit about their teammates, who weren't vaccinated, like dogged their teammates out. So I'd been ready the entire time for this question and had thought about how I wanted to answer it. And I had come to the conclusion, I'm going to say, I've been immunized. And if there's a follow-up, then talk about my process. But thought there's a possibility that I say I'm immunized. Maybe they understand what that means. Maybe they don't. Maybe they follow up. They didn't follow up. So then I go the season, them thinking, some of them, that I was vaccinated, right? Because the only follow-up they asked was basically asking me to rip on my teammates. Like, what do you say to your teammates who aren't vaccinated? Like, what kind of example do you feel like you're setting, to your teammates who aren't vaccinated? I said, hey, it's everybody's own decision with their body, and we're super healthy individuals. We take care of ourselves. We understand what goes in our bodies, and I don't have any judgment on any decision that a guy makes with their own body, right? But I knew
I
at
don't
some
buy
point,
his explanation.
if I contracted the COVID or if word got out, because it's the NFL and there's leaks everywhere, it was possible I'd have to answer the questions. And then sure enough, I contract COVID in at the beginning of November, end of October. And that's when the shitstorm hit, because now I'm a liar. I'm endangering, the community, my teammates, all these people, and the attempted takedown of me and my word and my integrity began. But so that was difficult. But I will say, and I'm thankful to be on this show. Like, I really appreciate you and you helping me out during that time. I reached out to you. I think beginning of the season, I feel like, and just said, hey, because you had talked about in your podcast a little bit, you'd had some, controversial, maybe less controversial now, people on there talking
quite a bit
about,
less controversial now,
talking about their, experts in the field, talking about, their own ideas about COVID, and you helped me with a game plan to be ready in case I did get COVID, and I followed it to a T. And when I got COVID, within 36 hours, I was, symptom free and feeling amazing. But the protocols was you're off for 10 days. So I missed a game. We lost a football game. I came back, had to answer a ton of questions about it. Obviously had my, basically I lost, the majority of allies I thought I had in the media. The good thing is it drew a real line in the sand, and everybody who wanted to jump on me, and trashed me did and showed their true colors. And very few people, you know, kind of in the media at least, stuck by me.
Okay, so some things kind of take away from that segment in particular. So he's still hammering down or doubling down on I had the allergy, which prevented me from getting the vaccine. But I still kind of don't buy his excuse for saying I was immunized. I feel as though when he says, oh, I was thinking in my mind, I was pre-planning having this statement ready whenever someone asked me, I don't think that was the case. And I don't think if anyone would have asked him a follow-up question that he would have really went into the process, because that would just confirm that he was in fact not vaccinated. That's at least my theory. That's some of my takeaways. I will say at the end, when he's talking about Rogan being one of his supporters, I thought it was so dumb that people went after him for being a friend of Joe Rogan. Like,
yeah, dude. God,
why is that a bad thing? Why is Joe Rogan the dividing line for so many people nowadays?
Dude, some people even declare that Joe Rogan is a conservative and that he supports conservatives. I've never ever heard Joe Rogan do any of that.
In fairness, and maybe we'll get to it in another segment that we're going to watch from this podcast, but he did tell Aaron Rodgers at one point to vote Republican. I did see that clip trending around the internet. I don't know the context for it. I think it was mostly, again, based off COVID vaccination restrictions, mandates, whatever have you. But Joe Rogan being considered public enemy number one, I still think is one of the silliest things over the last year and a half. Is he really that controversial?
He really
is he worth quitting your job over if you work at Spotify? No, I think either if you don't like him, you don't have to listen to his podcast. If you don't like our podcast, you don't have to listen to our podcast. That's a great thing about the free market. And now you have to go out of your way to listen to his podcast because it is on Spotify. If it was still on YouTube, easily accessible, maybe that's a different thing. But even then, that would be so silly to quote unquote cancel Joe Rogan. I think he's had guests of all backgrounds, and I think that it's weird to me that that is the hill that so many people die on nowadays.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. Like I don't get it. And then there's people that don't even listen to Joe Rogan that just hate him just because he was on CNN, just because they listen to what they have to say. It's like, dude, like actually listen to it.
Yeah, it really started to develop during the pandemic years, mostly because he was saying a counter theory to a lot of people. And instead of just respecting his beliefs, people said, you're endangering people because so many people look up to you. Well, Joe never expected to have an audience of millions of people listening into him to be the largest podcaster in the world. He's just going to say what's on his mind. And if that's how he feels, it's up to you, the listener, to discern whether or not that's information that you value or not.
Yeah.
I think it's just personal responsibility people have to take when they listen to Rogan or Aaron Rodgers or Kyrie Irving. Are you doing what you think is right in your own mind? Fine. Then who cares what they're doing? But that's just me. That's my soapbox. So let's move on to the next clip.